Okay, so we've discussed several rulers of Russia, a Tsar, which it derives its name from Caesar. And the Tsars that we've talked about are Ivan the Terrible or Ivan the Fourth. Okay, and we've talked about Tsar Michael Romanov, who starts the Romanov family after the time of trouble. And then we talked about Tsar Peter the Great, who westernizes Russia. If you look, we have on our little slideshow of the territory that how Muscovy or Russia expanded. So the purple is Moscow or Muscovy. Then you have, after the death of Ivan III, the orange section. And if you look, then you have the green section under Ivan IV. And then the, I guess the strawberry, it's more paisley strawberry, or whatever, strawberry color, not totally red, but pinkish, reddish, Peter the Great. And then you have the land of Catherine. Okay? So that's how Russia expands, right? And you have to understand Russia's foreign policy. Russia's foreign policy, they're trying to get a warm water port because most of their water ports are frozen 8 months out of the year. So they want a warm water port where they can receive goods all year round. Okay? And so if you see, the expansion of Catherine the Great has gone into the Black Sea. And they also view themselves as a third Rome. So it'd be nice for them to recapture Constantinople, which now is Istanbul. So that's one of their foreign policy objectives. I would argue probably one of the foreign policy objectives today. So I'd also argue that probably Vladimir Putin wants to reassemble what the Soviet Union had. Some of those countries actually have joined NATO, so that might cause a problem. So, but anyway, that's for the more modern era. So, but anyway, so here, what you're looking at is a map of Russia expansion in Europe. Now, remember, Britain's foreign policy is balanced power. So we're not going to talk about that today, but when we get to the 1800s, that is why the British are going to be anti-Russian because Russia's in expansion. The British see that as a threat. So but that's both those things, both Vladimir Putin and expansion in the 19th century is going to be later next semester. So let's talk about Catherine the Great and her expansion. So after Peter the Great's death in 1725, after he defeats Sweden in the Great Northern War, Russia's ruled by a series of weak czars. Okay, then comes along Catherine the Great. Okay? She actually seizes the throne from her husband Peter III, Tsar Peter III, and actually I believe has been executed. So that happens in 1762. And she's going to rule from 762 to 796. And Catherine the Great, or Catherine II, is going to be greatly influenced by European thinkers. She's going to be considered an enlightened despot. If you remember, enlightened despots are Joseph II of Austria, Louis XV of France, Frederick II of Prussia, and Catherine the Great. Now, she's going to consider herself an enlightened despot, and she's actually thinking about freeing the serfs, because Enlightenment despots are trying to rule. This was to be the first servant of all. This was to rule for their subjects. However, peasant uprising changed her mind, and she clamped down on the serfs pretty harshly. The serfdom is going to last for another century in Russia. It's not going to be until Alexander the II comes along. So, So she considered herself an enlightened despot. Remember, enlightened despots want to rule by reason. They want laws so that everyone knows what the laws are. They believe in constitutions. But Catherine the Great is going to rescind that because of the revolts by the peasants. Okay? She also is going to release the nobility, the boyars, from government service required by Peter the Great. And she's going to allow them to treat their serfs as they please. So, because of the revolt, more peasants are forced into serfdom than ever before, and their conditions worsen. Okay? And they're not going to be living. Serfdom is not going to be obliterated in Russia until 1861. Now, that's her domestic policy. Her foreign policy, we've already seen, her goal is to get a warm water port. She succeeds in the Crimea, near the Black Sea. So, if you look, between 1500 and 1800, Russia made tremendous territory gains, and they become a major European power. Right? Other Slavs, like the Lithuanians and the Poles, are going to lose land. So, I know we really haven't talked about this, but if you remember in 1683, it's the Poles that save Austria from the Turks under this guy named John Sobieski. Right? So, Poland and Lithuania and the Ukraine were all major powers in the Middle Ages up to the 16th and 17th century. But that all changes. Poland, for example, starts to be dominated by the Russian Tsars. Matter of fact, the Russian Tsars are actually picking the Polish kings to rule. It starts in the 18th century, the 1700s. Okay? Ukraine was its own independent country. Matter of fact, Russia would get its ideas from the Ukraine. It's because of the Ukraine that actually the Russians went Orthodox. But by the 1700s, the Ukraine are under the control of Russia. In addition to that, Poland is going to be split by three powers. Prussia under Frederick II, Austria under Maria Theresa, and Russia under Catherine the Great. It's called the Three Partition of Poland. So Poland was a major power in the 17th century, but is no more in the 18th century. I don't know, in the 18th century. And they're divided. That is called the Partition of Poland. Prussia, under Frederick II, he's already taken Silesia. Why not take Poland? Right? And so he pulls Maria Theresa with him to take Poland. Just to let you know, Maria Theresa didn't want to. Frederick II kind of forced her into it. So you can say you're protecting the Poles, and so that's what she did. So anyway, be that as it may, Poland is no more. It's not reestablished actually until Napoleon conquers the region and sets up a Duchy of Warsaw. It's not really Poland, but of course Napoleon's defeated, and then it's not until it's made after World War I. But we'll talk about World War I and Napoleon later. So that's one way Catherine expands the Russian border, is by taking land from Poland and having the Ukraine in her sphere. Second way she does it is she, of course, wants a warm water port. And at this time, in the late 18th century, the Ottoman Turks are starting to become a weak power. They made their high watermark militarily in 1683 by trying to take Vienna. They fail, and since that failure, they start to slowly lose their grasp on the Balkan Peninsula. Okay? And Catherine is going to take advantage of that. So she's going to see the weakness of the Ottomans and slowly take that land. So, what else do I want to say? Oh, yeah. So, but just to let you know, as the Ottoman Empire weakens, Austria is also going to have an interest in the Balkans. So, Balkans are going to be a mess because as the Turks start losing power in the Balkans, and that's why the Turks are called the sick man of Europe. You're going to have Russia that wants to intercede into that region. You want Austria wants to intercede in that region. You're going to have independent movements by Balkan states, the Bulgarians, the Hungarians, the Romanians, the Serbs, Macedonians, the Greeks want independence. So you're going to it starts to become a powder keg in the Balkan Peninsula. And I think I said this, but I want to make sure I said this. And this is the age where the Ottoman Turks are going to be known as the sick man of Europe. So that's all I have left for Russian expansion and Catherine the Great. So let me stop recording here for a second because I want to go to the students for a second. I want to break it up.